Hi, I'm reporter Matt, and our topic for today is symbolic arguments. Symbolic argument is a type of logical argument where we use symbols like letters and operators to represent statements and the relationship between them. What is argument? Argument is a sequence of statements or propositions designed to prove a conclusion based on some premises. So in arguments, there are two. It consists of two premises and conclusion. Premises assumed to be true, while ang conclusion naman, the statement that logically follows from the premises. So in arguments, there is two ways for you to consider it, valid and invalid. Valid if the conclusion is true, while invalid if it's not a valid argument. Argument types: deductive argument and inductive argument. Deductive argument if the premise is general to specific, while inductive argument naman if the premises is specific to generalization. So here's the example of deductive argument. Premise 1, if it's snowing, then it is cold. Premise 2, it is snowing. Conclusion, therefore, it is cold. So pansinin nyo sa premise 1, it implies generalization. While ang premise 2 naman, it is specific. So the meaning of deductive argument is generalization to specific. So that's why these examples are deductive arguments. Another example, premise 1, either Alice is home or Bob is home. Premise 2, Alice is not home. Conclusion, therefore Bob is home. Premise 1, it also implies general, while the premise 2 is specific. That's why it is deductive arguments. Ang inductive argument naman is kabaligtaran. It is specific to general. For example, every time I eat mango, I enjoy it. Premise 2, this mango looks ripe. Conclusion, I will probably enjoy this mango. Premise 1, it is specific. While premise 2 naman, they are implying general. Conclusion, I will probably enjoy this mango. Example, again, premise 1, I studied for the last 3 tests and got A's. Premise 2, I studied for this test too. Conclusion, I will probably get an A on this test. Pansinin nyo, premise 1, it implies specific, while premise 2 is general. And tandaan nyo lang lagi, if the premise 1 implies specific to general, ano siya? Inductive arguments. Ang deductive, if the premises implies general to specific. There are 4 standard forms in valid arguments: direct reasoning, contrapositive reasoning, transitive reasoning, and disjunctive reasoning. Valid arguments in symbolic form: direct reasoning, P implies Q, P therefore Q. Contrapositive reasoning, P implies Q, not Q, therefore not P. Disjunctive reasoning, P or Q, not P, therefore Q. Transitive reasoning, P implies Q, Q implies R, therefore P implies R. Or therefore, not R implies not P. Premise 1, if you run a red light, you'll get a ticket. Premise 2, you run a red light. Conclusion, therefore, you get a ticket. Ang P natin dyan is if you run a red light. Ang Q naman natin dyan is you'll get a ticket. So, bali, ang premise 1 natin, P implies Q. Ang magiging premise 2 na natin is P. Remember, ang P natin is you run a red light. And then, ang conclusion natin, therefore, Q. Therefore, you'll get a ticket. Kasi, ang Q natin is you'll get a ticket. Example number 2, premise 1, if a student cheats on the test, they will be disqualified. Premise 2, Alex cheated on the test. Conclusion, Alex will be disqualified. P, it implies the Q. And then, premise 2 natin is P. Ang maging conclusion natin, therefore, Q. Sa contrapositive reasoning naman, ang premise 1 natin, P implies Q. Premise 2, not Q. Conclusion natin, therefore, not P. For example, premise 1, if you bought biscuits, you went to the grocery. Ang P natin dyan is you bought biscuits. Ang Q naman natin dyan is you went to the grocery. Ang premise 2 natin should be not Q. So, ang Q natin dyan is you went to the grocery. Ang maging premise 2 natin is you did not go to the grocery. Ang conclusion natin is therefore not Q. So, ang P natin is you bought biscuit. Therefore, you did not buy biscuits. Kasi nga, ang contrapositive reasoning, P implies Q, not Q, and then therefore not P. So in transitive reasoning, P implies Q, Q implies R, our conclusion therefore P implies R. For example, our premise 1, if a figure is a square, then it is a rectangle. Ang P natin dyan, a figure is a square, and then ang Q natin dyan, it is a rectangle. So, P implies Q. Our premise 2 naman, if a figure is a rectangle, then it is a parallelogram. Q implies R. Remember, in a premise 1, RQ is a rectangle. Sa premise 2 naman natin, it implies R, that it is a parallelogram. So, premise 2, Q implies R. So, maging conclusion natin is, therefore, P implies R. Remember, ang P natin is, a figure is a square. Ang R naman natin is, it is a parallelogram. So, maging conclusion natin is, therefore, if a figure is a square, then it is a parallelogram kasi it implies P implies R. So, the last is disjunctive reasoning. Disjunctive reasoning is P or Q. Premise 2 is not P. Ang conclusion natin, therefore, Q. For example, premise 1, either I will have coffee or I will have tea. Premise 2 natin is not P, diba? So, I'm out of coffee. Kasi nga sa premise 1, ang P natin is I will have coffee. Ngayon, ang maging premise 2 natin is not P. So, I'm out of coffee. Ang conclusion natin is therefore Q. Sa premise 1, ang Q natin dyan is I will have tea. So, ang maging conclusion natin is therefore I will have tea. Standard forms of two invalid arguments, fallacy of the converse and fallacy of the inverse. Fallacy of the converse, P implies Q, Q therefore P. Fallacy of the inverse, P implies Q, not P, therefore not Q. Yung arrow dyan, ang meaning dyan implies. Yung ano naman, yung snake, it implies, meaning yan is not. Yung 3 dot, meaning is therefore. While yung letter V naman, meaning niya is or. Fallacy of the converse. Premise 1, P implies Q. If someone is a bird, then they can fly. Our P there is someone is a bird. Ang Q natin dyan is they can fly. Premise 2 natin is Q. This person can fly. Wala na yung so they must be a bird. Wala na yan. So, ang premise 2 lang natin is this person can fly. Q lang. Ang maging conclusion natin is P. Since this person can fly, they must be a bird. This argument is invalid kasi nga, hindi man porket yung person maka-fly, i-bird na siya kagad. There's many reasons for a person can fly. Malay mo gumagamit siya ng like flying materials, ganon. So, fallacy of the inverse, ang premise 1 is P implies Q, not P, therefore not Q. Premise 1, if someone is a doctor, they went to medical school. Policy natin, if someone is not a doctor, they didn't go to medical school. This argument is invalid kasi nga, a person could go to med school but not become a practicing doctor. Kasi hindi naman lahat ng nag-aaral sa med school, in the future, they would proceed into doctor. Diba? So, it is an invalid arguments. So, that's all. Thank you for listening about symbolic arguments.